Another requirement for your data guard migration is to have a SQLnet connectivity directly from source to target. And I say directly because we can see cases where customers with very secure environments might have a situation like a primary database in one data center, a standby database in another data center without a direct connection, and they then put a data guard far sync instance between the two to handle replication in kind of a DMZ zone, so that the databases aren't exposed in that DMZ zone. It's only redo being kind of forwarded from one database to another. Well, that works fine for data guard, and FarSync is a really nice feature for that kind of situation, but it's not good enough to do a direct migration, because for that switchover and roll switch and all that, you're going to want to have that SQLnet connectivity in place. RMAN compression is something that you might want to think about for reducing the network load when you're instantiating that initial standby database, especially if you're doing RMAN backup and restore to instantiate it. The smaller the backups, the smaller the amount of data that you have to transfer over the network. And the general rule of thumb is that network is an order of magnitude slower than storage, and storage is an order of magnitude slower than memory. So in this case, we want to reduce the amount of data being moved over the slowest channel, which is your network. RMAN compression can help with that a lot. Now, the advanced forms of compression are generally part of the advanced compression option, but you could still use RMAN basic compression to reduce the size of your backups. You also want to think about encryption here, because security, of course, is paramount in most environments these days. And even if you have a secure network layer or secure subnets and so on, it is a really good idea to have multiple levels of security just in case the unthinkable happens and someone breaches that outer layer. So having TDE in place in your database is, of course, a good idea. That's the advanced security option. Or at the very least, if your source database is not encrypted, maybe you're moving to a situation where you're going to encrypt the database, you should encrypt your backups so that the data is encrypted not just at rest, but while in motion. So use RMAN encryption on your backups if you don't have TDE on your source database. Speaking of those backups, if you have a really big database, let's say you have a 200 terabyte database and you've got big file table spaces, you probably have some data files that are more than 10 terabytes in size. A big file table space can be up to 32 terabytes if you have an 8K block size. And that's a big file to move with one RMAN channel, because by default, RMAN's parallelism, what we have called RMAN channels, will use one channel per file in the database. If you have these really large table space data files, ones that get into multiple terabytes or even tens of terabytes in size, what you should do is use RMAN's multi-section backup capability that will break your table space data files when they're backed up into smaller sections so that you can use multiple channels to back up a single data file.